In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also you were called in one body, and be thankful. This verse from Colossians is, I think, closely connected to the famous quote from Saint Seraphim of Sarav that goes, "Acquire the spirit of peace, and 1,000 souls around you will be saved." But what is this spirit of peace of God that is being referenced by Saints Paul and Seraphim? From a lived perspective, it might be thought of as the blessed state of being we experience whenever we are free of conflict with any person or thing. It is conflict that breaks our own peace of soul and creates the obstacle to our unity with others. In order to properly understand what this state actually is, however, we need to first define the concepts by which it is described. For one thing, while peace of soul is largely registered psychologically as a feeling, it is much more than this. True peace of soul, rather than the delusion of this found in the New Age and other Eastern meditative practices, is based first and foremost on true humility and love of God. The practitioners of such forbidden arts, on the other hand, are often characterized by their false virtues, which are easy to reveal with some simple tests. I grew up in one of the New Age capitals of the world and have had many dealings with these types of people over the course of my lifetime. What I've observed is that pretty much without exception, they are fundamentally self-centered, self-absorbed, and oriented primarily towards self-gratification. They may talk much about peace and love, but their daily activities and the general course of their lives typically paint a very different picture. Just kindly question any of their noxious beliefs or practices and see how much peace and love you get in return. And this really shouldn't be a surprise when you consider that for those who have subjugated themselves to the religion of self, their God of self must be defended at all costs. True peace of soul, on the other hand, is exactly the opposite of this. It is not a peace that we manufacture for ourselves by means of manipulating our minds and bodies through various practices alone, but rather a free gift of God Himself that we can attract only by living the Christian life, with everything that entails. We are talking here about such practices as prayer, fasting, living according to the commandments, and regularly participating in the church's liturgical and sacramental life. Only when we live in peace with our neighbor can we experience true peace in our souls. And likewise, only when our souls are in a state of true peace are we able to maintain real peace with others, especially in difficult situations. It is true that some conflicts with others are unavoidable. Yet, even when forced by circumstances to confront those who might be hostile to us for whatever reason, we must be sure to maintain our own state of peace and love for those who fail to reciprocate it. This does not mean we don't take appropriate and necessary actions, but it should never be done out of anger or the desire to see them suffer. And whatever actions we should take should never be more than is required to resolve the situation. The man or woman living fully according to the spirit of peace of God is strongly grounded and will not be upset by anything except for sin, which they wholly counter in themselves and pity in others. He or she treats everyone with respect and courtesy, regardless of how they are treated by them, and they do not take criticism personal. They continually forgive the transgressions of others, while asking God to forgive their own transgressions. They recognize and accept that everything that happens to them is either willed or allowed by God for their ultimate benefit, and are thus thankful for all things. When one lives in this way, dear faithful, not only do they benefit themselves greatly, but this peace is also beneficial for others. When we are living in the peace of Christ, those around us are likewise graced to experience some part of this peace for themselves. And the same is true for the opposite. When we are in an interior state of conflict, we often spread this conflict to others. In other words, our state of being is somehow contagious. Whatever we have, we give. Haven't we all experienced people that make us feel better or worse? Those who we want to be around and those whom we don't. Whether they realize it or not, everyone at the core of their being ultimately desires this peace of soul and are moved by the experience of it in others. Now, this can get obscured somewhat in an environment so filled with multi-level conflict that our frame for judging what's normal gets obscured. Like the person who cannot endure silence, it is possible for someone to get so used to chaos that they eventually come to find a sort of perverse comfort in it. There are those who almost seem to need to create drama in their life, and when it doesn't naturally present itself for whatever reason, they will even manufacture it just so they can experience passion, even if it is of a kind that is not pleasant for them. They are like the child who acts up just to get attention, even if that attention is quite negative. But this is utterly perverse and not only exists in one who has never experienced true peace, or has forgotten or lost sight of what it was like. For those who have not completely submitted themselves to the spirit of the evil one, however, there is something appealing about a person living in union with their Creator, something they too want to be united with. And yet, for those of us who are genuinely trying to live the Christian life, we experience a more common problem, which is falsely believing that we are living in a spirit of peace, when in fact we are not. Father Seraphim Rose tells a story from the early days of his brotherhood and offers some helpful advice. In San Francisco, there was one who got on fire with the idea of the Jesus prayer. He began adding prayer to prayer, and he finally came to, in the morning, 5,000. Right in the middle of the world, in the middle of the city, in the morning, before doing anything else, before eating, he was able to say 5,000 Jesus prayers on the balcony. And he felt wonderfully refreshed and inspired. It happened one morning that somebody else came out right underneath the balcony and began busying himself and doing something while this person was saying his last 1,000. And it so happened that this person was so put out by this that he ended up throwing dishes at him. How can you deal with a person occupying himself with the spiritual life, with a Jesus prayer, when all of a sudden, while he is saying it, he is able to start throwing dishes? This means that inside of him the passions were free, because he had some kind of deceived idea or opinion that he knew was right for himself spiritually. He acted according to his own opinion, but not soberly, not according to knowledge, and when the opportunity came, the passions came out. In this case, it is more profitable not to say those 5,000 Jesus prayers, but to do something else that is spiritual. The Holy Scriptures, the writings of the Holy Fathers, and the examples of the saints' lives, the services of the church, all these things have to do not with worldliness in our daily life, but with conducting us to heaven. By looking above to these things, we are enabled to have zeal. That is, to see that there is something above this routine of worldliness, which is very boring, discouraging, and leads nowhere. In everything that happens, we must look at the higher side, that is, the spiritual side. Because if we are sometimes looking at the higher side and sometimes at the lower side, we will be up and down. And the lower side is so powerful. Therefore, if we are sometimes looking above and sometimes below, if we are going 1 foot forward and 1 foot back, and then 1 foot forward and 2 feet back, we will simply not get to the gate of heaven. We must be at all times where we are in some way looking at the spiritual reality. Thus, the details of earthly life must be second, and this looking upwards must be with zeal, determination, and constancy. If for just one day we stop these otherworldly injections, it is obvious that worldliness starts to invade. When we go without them for one day, worldliness begins taking over. 2 days, much more, and on it goes, until our minds are completely shifted. These daily injections of heavenly food are the outward side, and the inward side is what is called the spiritual life. Spiritual life does not mean being in the clouds and saying the Jesus prayer or going through various motions. It means discovering the laws of the spiritual life as they apply to one in one's own position, one's situation. Dear viewers, I think you will find that when you follow this blessed advice, you will begin to experience a real and lasting peace of soul. When one is living in this peace, it is then possible to be truly at peace with others. It is in this way that Saint Seraphim can say, "Acquire the spirit of peace, and 1,000 souls around you will be saved." And then and only then, when we are genuinely at peace with God, ourselves, and one another, we will then be able to experience and live in the unity that we as true followers of Christ are called to. Wrapping up today's video, our truth and practice tip of the day is 1. Peace of soul is not merely a feeling, but rather a state of being. 2. It can only be experienced when we are at peace with God and others. And 3. It is cultivated by a properly living of the Christian life and keeping our attention always turned toward heaven while regularly interacting with spiritual texts. In our next video in this series, we'll explore the question of whether or not works are necessary for salvation. Feel free to post any questions, thoughts you might have, or ideas for future videos you would like to see down in the comments section below. I'll do my best to respond to them. If you found value in this content, I would appreciate if you gave it a like. And if you'd like to see more, go ahead and subscribe and set the notification bell to all. And finally, if you would like to support this channel, please check out the links in the description box below to find out how you can participate in our other online ministries. Thank you, and may the Lord bless you.